So, I'm Scott Fossine, and I work at Prairie Lakes AEA out of Fort Dodge. Guess I turned around, I got my anniversary notice that I've been there for 19 years. So now I can start doing my rule of 88s and figure out, no, I'm babbling. I've been listening to a couple podcasts, Security Now, Steve Gibson, I've listened to quite a bit, and talking about all the password breaches and stuff. And the agency I work for, we have staff members from varying degrees of technology levels, and it basically kind of got to a point hearing one of the episodes, and it's like, you know what, I think I'm going to make it a soapbox that I'm going to turn around and talk about putting all this together and bringing people up to know how to protect themselves on it. So that's kind of where this kind of came across to be on it. If you want to follow along, I do have a QR code. It's like trying to get all these technology things in. So the QR code, a bit.ly link, and all the presentations on a Moodle site back at our office. So the ideal situation was is if I had a problem with my computer, I could load it up on somebody else's. But all right, so I'm going to come down to the presentation portion of here. So, and I've always been intrigued by some of the security breaches and things that were going on. And I finally kind of got to the point to where it's like, I need to do something different. It's like, I have a password that I've been using since I started the first time I was on the internet. It's like, and I've been using that, and I don't feel proud of what it is because it's pretty short. It's pretty simple, and
what is it?
Yeah, I'll guarantee it's in the top 50 list of most common used passwords. It is not necessarily the case anymore that that's the way it is, and I'll get into that particular part of it. So when I put this presentation together, part of it is for our staff, part of it was for, I presented at the iTech conference down in Des Moines every once in a while, so students, teachers, and it's just a soapbox that I feel that I needed to bring everyone up to speed and know, because invariably it's like, I'm horrible at remembering things, but most of the time when I need somebody's password, they tell me what it is. It's like, really? That's really what you used? Okay, and then we have this password discussion on it. So the first part, digital identity. Like I said, when I started on it, the internet was, it was, just past Gopher. It was the first version of Netscape is what I was working with. So what I failed to take into part is to turn around and go back and audit on how the technology changed and what's available on it. It's like, it's how much of my life how much of all of our lives are on the internet and the cloud are there now. It just kind of creeps up on you, and it's just like one day it's like, wow, how did all that get up there and stuff on it? This slide, what can the ones and zeros tell you? I know Google, there was a joke about Microsoft, but it's going to be Google, and it's like they only want to control two things on the internet. Just two things. Everything else everyone can have, ones and zeros. That's all they want to control. But what ones and zeros can tell about people on it. One of the stories that I heard on the podcast, and it was on Forbes as well, is it was a news article about how a father was upset with Target because he had a teenage daughter, and all of a sudden Target started sending her flyers on diapers and formula and prenatal vitamins and stuff on it. And the guy called up Target and just really upset. He goes, what are you encouraging my daughter, to this lifestyle? Or what's coming, are you encouraging her for this? And it was about 3 days later, his daughter confronted him and told her that she was pregnant. And, basically Target nailed it. Well, one of the things that Target did is every time you use a credit card, they have a big database. And at the time, they were going through and using that data, and they kind of were able to determine if somebody was pregnant and the expectant day. They could turn around and actually target it. And it was something like 2 weeks before a doctor could, or something based off of their shopping habits. It's kind of scary, But if you think about, that's what Target can do with just that little bit of information on your purchasing parts of it. What does the NSA know about us? Watching all the email things and stuff on it. So maybe we should bleep that part of it out. I don't want to. So, what was it about? It's like, why do I need to back up my computer anymore? I can just get it from. You know, the other thing is, you know, at the time, you know, I mean, I've seen the industry through the points of, you know, when our schools first got connected to the internet, it was direct connection, public internet IP addresses, you know, no big deal. You know, and mostly the hacking parts of it were just people wanting to deface websites and turn around and put up something stupid or whatnot. It got to the point, though, that I started recognizing that they were starting to want to use the resources of the schools. They had fairly decent bandwidth. I had one school district that was complaining about their server was running out of hard drive space. Actually, he was on vacation in Florida for a little while, and I noticed there was a bunch of traffic on their internet. I was monitoring their bandwidth, found FTP traffic. I shut down the port for him, and just like 3 months later, you know, we were talking about how his server was kept running out of space, and when we dug down through it, we found something like 30 gigs worth of pirated software that was up there. And the directory structure, how it was in alphabetical order, you could turn around when you did a directory, the first several lines was a banner ad saying, you know, hacked by Pirates America or something on it. But they were using that part of it. So, but people right now where we're at, you know, three things. They want the internet and they want access to your resources and stuff on it. So, and it's a multi-billion dollar agency, I suspect, at this point in time. So there's a lot of effort going in to be able to take to it. I had that 80s flashback of that song, kind of being paranoid about watching me and stuff on it. But this particular part of it has to deal with Wi-Fi connections, and you know, I've gotten to the point where I'm really paranoid about, you know, I would say when I go to Starbucks, but I'm not a coffee drinker, so I don't go to Starbucks. But at the hotels and stuff, I've gotten to the point where I just use my Wi-Fi on my phone. I don't trust going onto their particular part of it. I get really leery on wireless access points that are open. So if it doesn't ask you to put in a passphrase or a pre-shared key, basically it's like a party line phone. Anyone who types that same SSID on the wireless network can fire up a packet sniffer and watch all the traffic going past.
Hey Scott, you want to explain to the children in the room what a party line telephone was?
Yes, and actually, I have to do this. I have to do this, and unfortunately, this means airing some of my family's dirty laundry. So, I grew up in the country, and I remember going to my grandma's house, and so she was on a party line. It was one phone line. It's just like a bunch of telephone extensions on one single line, and the phone would have a different rings for be different people on the part of it. My grandmother, bless her soul, turned around, and it really didn't matter who was calling. She'd hear the phone, and then after it stopped ringing, it'd be lifting up the receiver, you know, the handset, so you could listen to it. But it even got so elaborate that I knew how to unscrew and take the microphone out of the handset. You know, so she knew all the gossip, and everyone else knew all the gossip of it as well. So it happens. But that's the same. Basically, Wi-Fi. You know, the networking before switching technology, that was actually everything else. All machines were able to see all traffic. You know, back when the internet was started, security was never an issue, so protocols like email were never encrypted. So, you know, you could fire up Wireshark and you could turn around and capture usernames and passwords just flying across on it. I did it once, I think, at the iTech conference, and it was like kind of a hard thing. It's like, do I really show it up here? And it's like, but it's all set up that way. So anyway, when you're turning around connecting, oh, I know the other part of it is that, and I don't think it works anymore, but there was a Firefox extension called Firesheep. And when it came out, it was a cool thing. Before, you had to know a little bit of technology on it before. Wireshark, and you could look at things and stuff on it. But these guys created this great tool called Firesheep, and it was an elegant tool. You loaded it in, it was a Firefox extension. You go to one of these open Wi-Fi points, you start up your computer, and you sit and watch around. People come up, they log into Facebook, and the program would sniff that information. It would show up their profile picture of what they had on Facebook, and there'd be a link, and so you could see who was all on it. And all that person had to do was click on the button, and they basically they were able to be that user. They didn't have to know the password because it was just an authenticated session, but they were able to get in and do everything. Now, luckily, Facebook required you to have your original password to change your password, so they couldn't change the password, but while they were in there, they could post as that user, do a lot of fun things, I guess, on it. And that was all because of open Wi-Fi points on it. So one of the things that's I just did recently is on my laptop over here is I actually have a VPN back to my office in Fort Dodge. Just a simple PPP, it's not the best thing in the world, but I've got to the point now when if I connect to a public Wi-Fi, I'll launch that VPN connection. So everything then is encrypted from my machine to Fort Dodge, and then it's viewable from there when I go out, but if somebody was able to look into my parts of it. If you don't have the ability to put in your own VPN service on it, there are some relatively inexpensive services that you can go out to and get VPN services for as well. But that might be a session for another day here of how to set up your own VPN server. This is one of the things that really kind of triggered my interest in this whole part of it. Is a writer from Wired magazine. It was just after Thanksgiving, and let's see, 2012. He's sitting here working on his project. If you want to hear the whole story, and you come back up to the site, there is the audio clip is right up on here. You can listen to the whole part of what happened on it. But basically, Mac infrastructure, he was sitting working on a thing. He happened to notice on a glance of out of his eye that his iPhone screen powered on and went off. And he was expecting a phone call, and he went up, a few minutes later, and the phone was inaccessible. So turned around saying something about he didn't put a password on it, but it was asking him for a password. And ultimately what ended up happening is over the course of an hour or so, somebody had basically went in and wiped his computer, his phone, and their whole goal was, it was a group of kids who actually turned around and volunteered how they did it, and one of them did, and what happened on it. And it's just kind of a stupid set of events of what happened. But Matt his Twitter handle was Matt, M-A-T, 3 letters, and they thought it was cool. They didn't know the guy, they just saw this 3-letter Twitter handle, and their whole goal is to take over that Twitter handle and post a bunch of inappropriate things and stuff on it, which they were able to accomplish. And it had to deal with some issues that they used Amazon and Apple and password resets, and it had to deal with, they turned around and it's very elaborate what the kids ended up doing to get it, but it was a couple security holes. One of them felt that the last 4 digits of a credit card number wasn't important, so they would show that on the screen. The other one used the authentication of, it was really the main things was, it was their name, their address, and the last 4 digits of a credit card number on file. And so they were able to use the other site to grab the last 4 digits of the credit card numbers, log into their Apple Mac account, and then there was a button that just says, hey, my stuff has been stolen, wipe it. And they erased all of his stuff on it. So, but the other things they said is they were, all the steps that they did, they were really just one step away from turning around and doing a password reset on his bank account. They could have turned around and easily have logged in with his bank credentials, got access to that. That was really close to it. But a lot of things use that security of name, address, last 4 digits of a credit card. And I live out in the country, so I don't have this particular advantage. But if anyone's ever called up Pizza Hut, Domino's, or whatever, and you paid for it online, that trustworthy delivery man, has all that information. Or not to single out pizza delivery people, but it's out there quite a bit on it. So if you get a chance, like I said, it's the podcast goes into the whole details, the timeline, and exactly what happened, how it worked out, and it's kind of an intriguing story of how all that worked. A few good friends. So, the very first time I got on Facebook, I decided, somebody said, hey, you got a friend request. It's like, okay, fine, I accept them. I can't remember. I had 400 friends, and it's just like, and it got to be the point to where it's like the information I was getting on my screen, there was things that I just didn't want to know about certain people on it. So I shut off Facebook. Then I got my first smartphone that had Facebook on it, and I said, all right, I'll try it again. But I limited who, I turned around and I thought about it at that point in time. It's like, I don't post a lot, but I'm going to be really picky about who I put on it. I'm so picky that I have family members that I do not have in my Facebook friends list. And a lot of that is mostly because I've seen some of their posts, and I'm happier to remember them how I think they are in my head than some of the pictures that I might have seen on it. So, Facebook, when they were setting it up, their policy was, hey, we want you to have as many friends as possible, and we're going to share stuff with friends of friends, everybody in the public and stuff on it. So from a social media part of it, I tightened down my security. So there's a setting on my friends. So if I'm not quite sure about it, I call them acquaintances. There's an option to say, how are they friends? And if you set acquaintances, they really are limited on what they can do. And then I'll have friends and family and stuff on it. But I have set it up that I only share with friends and friends of friends. Matter of fact, I think a lot of times that's just friends, because there's some people I'm friends with, I kind of question their friends. But again, if you're don't worry. If you're listening to this, you're not one of those friends. But again, things like password hints. People were talking about it. It's like, where else are you going to find out hints for passwords? Hey, what's your dog's name? What's your, there's a lot of information that can be found there. The profile, my Facebook profile keeps turning around and saying, you need to update your profile. What school did you go to? I went to the School of Hard Knocks, which evidently is in Arizona, and it did let me put that in. I turn around and I tried to make up a town, and it's saying, no, that town doesn't exist. So I might have to come up with something in Antarctica or something on it to say where I'm from. But I've learned that it's like, I try to keep my personal information off of there. And just because it's a gold mine for people looking for that information to help take over, how can they get a foothold into your digital identity? I want to try to limit that as much as possible on it. Now there's a few different things. LinkedIn, I'm not so much worried about LinkedIn, I guess. My policy on LinkedIn is I had to at least go out to dinner with you before I set it up. So I get a lot of salespeople, hey, you want to be my friend? It's like, I have no idea who you are. No. Buy me lunch, we'll talk about it. But and then even then, that isn't a guarantee. But on the social networking, to protect it, kind of know that that's an exposure to turn around and have personal information that theoretically could be used to get a foothold into your account or your digital identity. Find a new mother. Now, I will say I've been doing this for probably about 15 years. Not necessarily for all the things on it, but it's like the bank, it's security. Oh, for safety reasons, if you forget your password, what's your mother's maiden name? When I was at the agency one, I turned around and I had a door prize for the first person who could say, if you can find my mother's maiden name, I had something for him. And, it literally, I want to say a Google search because my name's unique enough, a Google search can find my mother's maiden name pretty darn easy on it. So, what I kind of came up with is I have a different mother for my security question on it. And so I'm not going to tell anyone who my other mother is. And but ultimately, even at the fact that they know what my mother's true maiden name is, that is not my security. That's not the answer to my security question on it. Now the problem is now they started getting clever and things that people would never know. It's like oh, where were you born? What was your high school mascot? And it's like almost everything you can look up. So my mother's maiden name, unofficially, I really shouldn't say this, is my answer to all of the questions. So I don't have to remember what it is. But it's going to be, like I said, it'll be a little bit more challenging for people to turn around and find it based off of that particular part on it. So, my encouragement is yes, I know no matter how much you love your mother or don't, that's your part of it. But for your digital identity, adopt a new one. And I will say, I used to be in bulletin board services once, and there is the password into some part of his site was, he was a lawyer. So there's a famous case called Railroad versus Fallsgraph. And for the life of me, I still can't spell Fallsgraph correctly to get into it. I mean, it's PH, and there's some other weird, the way it's all arranged, it was kind of a difficult thing on it. So, no, that's not my mother's maiden name. But it limits what they could do with it. If you want to use a pet's name, make up a pet. It's and then don't share it with it. I mean, that's going to be something my wife doesn't know my fake mother's maiden name. I don't trust anybody with that particular part. So, not even her. So, I'm going to go fishing here. And actually, if anyone wants to go, we're going to Canada on Thursday, and we'll be back in a week from now. But, email, working with email, this is where it started. It's like there was a while that the spam scanners that I had on our server, we did a manual scan just because all the ones that were questionable, and it's like invariably it's going to be, hey, you got a rich relative in Indonesia or India, and all you have to do is send us $300, and I'm still waiting for like 5 million. I can't quite understand. I can't get answers back from them. But it's they're getting better. It's like the first, it used to be at a time when you turn around and I get these phishing things on it. You look at it, it's like, the grammar is really bad on this. It's somebody who didn't speak English, and it's just like you look at it and it's just like there's no way this is right. The first one that actually got me was confirmation from Amazon. It's like, oh, your package will be arriving, Thursday, but there was like, we just wanted to let you know, and it's just like, I just got the package from Amazon. I'm looking at it on my phone, and it's like, well, this all looks legitimate and stuff on it. But I'm looking at it, it's like, but it wasn't $102. What? It was like $52. It's like, that doesn't make sense. But I was almost ready to click on it just to see what it was. And I thought, I think I'm going to wait till I get home. And when I pulled it up on the computer, then it was like, when you hovered over the link took you to some, it was like AmazonUS.scammer.com is ultimately what the link was and stuff on it. So, but yeah, I mean, they're getting better all the time. They're looking more and more legitimate. They're working to make it look like the sites and stuff on it. So, one of the first security breaches that I heard about, RSA, the company that makes those little key fobs that have the rotating digits on it and stuff on it, they were compromised, and somebody broke in and got the keys basically that helped them generate the numbers that showed up on the screens and stuff on it. And it turned out to be that it came from a phishing email sent to the secretary of somebody in the establishment whose computer had access to the back part of it. And and if I remember right, it was something about, it was like the 2013 staff attrition list. It's like, and so it's like, hey, am I going to have a job tomorrow? Ooh, let me check. Open up a link, and lo and behold, it loaded the foothold on that the hackers needed. Once they were on that, they were able to grab the data off of it, and for RSA, known for security, it's a pretty major compromise for it. So, that's one of the things I've set up for it. So you have to get to a point of if you're not expecting it, don't open anything that you're not expecting on it. Question everything. If I send an email to somebody, and they see it, most of the time they know that they're going to be getting it. You know, if I get an email from Dan and I don't know about it, and it's something about, see funny pictures about something on it, and I go, well, Dan doesn't normally send me funny pictures, but Dan's a great guy. You know, I might struggle with that a little bit, but now I will say that one thing that I have done, and is so like on my mail client, is, so I'm using Microsoft Live for my mail client, and I've set it so I don't have a preview window, so I can click on the message without it opening up the email window, because that's one of the things that sometimes they're HTML based, and just viewing the message will infect the machine. The other thing I do is I actually set it so it displays all my messages in plain text. Kind of a pain on some aspects on it, but on the other hand, you know, every message I come in, it's in plain text, minimizes the risk of any scripting or anything that would come along with the email messages on it. So, you know, I have to basically, I get a good way to look through, scan through the messages, see if it's legitimate or not. And then when I hit the reply button, it'll turn around and put back in all the HTML code if I want to see the pretty pictures and stuff on it. Email is one piece on it. So if you get an opportunity, whatever email client you use, if you can shut off the preview part of it, it would help quite a bit on preventing a vector that somebody could come in and take over your machine on it. So keeping up with the Joneses, you know, I mean, that's been around for ages on it. It's like, you know, you turn around and you work out, and you figure out how to stop the hackers, then the hackers have to turn around and figure out how to get back in. And then, you know, it's a never-ending battle of coming in and building things and stuff on it. Back when I wrote this, the main security breaches, LinkedIn, Sony was the big one on it. There was actually a website, was Sony hacked today? And it was a countdown to how many days it was that Sony had been hacked. And during that time of the podcast, I don't think it ever got beyond a week. But it was their PlayStation Network or something on it that got compromised at the time. Adobe, in today's world, in today's thing on it, it was an agency of the federal government, lost, I can't remember how many millions it was anyone who ever applied for security clearance. And what was the deal? Their database was all in clear text, non-encrypted, and they were saying, well, it's kind of this encrypting thing's kind of a new technology, so we haven't got around to doing it yet. It's kind of like, you know, car insurance and something on it. You know, I mean, you have it, you're pretty sure you know your skills as a driver, that you're not going to have anything on it, but what you don't know is the skills of all the rest of the people on the road. You know, who do you give your information to? Are they dealing with it properly? And it's kind of a really big deal. At the time of this, the dictionary attack is one of the first one of the first things they'll try. You know, if they get a username database of things that are corrupted, the first thing they'll use is a dictionary attack. And right now, there's over 100 million entries in publicly available dictionaries for them to turn around and guess on what's kind of going through on it. So now, 100 million, I should have looked this up. There's something about, you know, I mean, it's way beyond the number of words that are in the, you know, unabridged dictionary. But clever passwords don't work either. You know, unfortunately, we're all human and we all have brains, and unfortunately, what sounds like a great idea to us is probably a great idea to quite a few other people on it. You know, so, you know, you can almost guarantee that all different versions of the word password, you know, use the @ for A's and the $ for S's and a 0 for an O, you know, different combinations. They're all in the dictionary part of it. So if you're trying to obscure a password by modifying it a little bit, but it's still a simple password, it's more than likely not gonna turn around and cut it. The other thing is, so passwords have gotten to the point where they're encrypting them, but the hackers, you know, first were using CPUs to break the encryption of it. Then they discovered they could access the GPUs on graphics cards, and Bitcoin when it first came out. You know, you're trying to do, basically, it's the equivalent of password cracking to turn around and try to mine a Bitcoin. And So, because there were substantial dollars in it, they worked it, and if I remember right, do I have it on here? Inexpensive hardware. They were talking about a machine of less than $1,000. You could load in multiple GPU cards on it, and I mean the amount of passwords that thing could crack is it was in the millions of passwords a second, if I remember right, for that particular part of it. So then they went from that to ASIC-based password things that'll just dwarf what the capabilities were on the other things on it. So, even though if you have a decent password, they can brute force guess passwords so fast that if you have, I'll talk about some things you can do to help go against that particular part, but some passwords can be broken relatively quickly, even in that particular scenario on it. And then we get into cloud computing on it. Well now, and actually there are services that you can find out on the internet that you can pay for a cloud-based password cracker, and you pay so much for time on it, you load them in your list, and they turn around and put all the power of Amazon against breaking these passwords for you. And so if somebody wants in, and they're going to get in. One of the early years that I was at Interop, I'm going to go off on a tangent. One of the earlier years I went to Interop, I went to a workshop, and it was the guys who wrote the book Hacking Exposed. And they actually did this one-day workshop, and they were up there. They spent the first day talking about social engineering. They talked about most of their password breaking capabilities all came from looking up the trash, making phone calls. Said you'd be amazed at how many people they could turn around, they call up the secretary or somebody, say, yeah, this is John down in IT, and I need to work on your email system. Could you give me your email password and username and password so I can check this on it? How many people would be just, oh, sure, here it is, and just assume that it was kind of going on with that particular part of it. But then the second half of the day, they were called in to do testing, pen testing, or testing the security of the site. And so they actually built the key components. They actually had the key components of this network that they tested on it. And it was like, well, they had a firewall. It looks like they did everything right. And they had some really interesting complications. So they had a firewall. They even had a part where it was protocol isolation. They jumped from IP to IPX protocol and back to IP. And literally it was, okay, so we went to this firewall, we got into Telnet to this port, and it came up and had this part of it. They did a Google search on a certain site and pulled up and said, oh, look, this is the exploit here it has. They spent more time explaining the hack than it was boom, boom, boom. Oh, we're in that machine. And they walked all through these parts. The protocol isolation, oh, no, that's a big deal. You download this program here, you do this, boom, boom, boom. They owned it. And they got to one spot and they said, all right, this is where it gets a little bit dicey. They said, up until this point, everything that we've done won't show up on any intrusion prevention things. There's no logging. They don't know that we're here. And I mean, they were deep into this computer company's network. He goes, we're going to download and run this program here, and it will cause a blip. If they're running this program and they're watching it, it'll cause like one line of code to be put in. There's probably a million lines of things on it. That's what it's going to do. But we know that part of it. But basically, they just walked through, and every step was just literally, it's just like, oh, click, 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 and they were in. And then I think the last part of it is the accounting department, what they were supposed to try to get was behind a second firewall in a secured location. Only certain people had access to it. And ultimately, what ended up happening is that there was a guy who worked in that department, but also had the computer on the outside, and he got tired of having to go back and forth through the wall. So he bought a second NIC for his computer, and then he wired his computer into the other part, so they were able to bypass the firewall from this guy's machine. I think they discovered, and don't quote me on this part of it, but I think that they discovered that at the time, and this was like T1 days, that one of their employees was serving one of the largest porn sites on the internet at the time too. They had ordered a couple T1 lines into their desktop machine, and that was coming through. I know that was in the conversation. I don't remember exactly how that played into it, but that's the thing is people are clever. I mean, you turn around and set up all the security in the world, and somebody says, well, I'm getting tired of this, but I can turn around and bring a wireless access point in, plug it in, and then I can turn around, I don't have to put this password in or something on it. From a business standpoint, it could happen. So back in October, the Adobe thing was come up, and the hackers had basically broke most of the passwords off of it. And so they came, this was the top 25 passwords that they found. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 was number 1. Password was 2. QWERTY, people were too lazy on it. Now somebody said, I'm going to make it a lot harder, so I'm going to use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. No one would ever think of putting 8, 9 at the end of it. Monkey was number 17. I don't know why that keeps showing up on the list. It was an Adobe site, so Photoshop was a lot of passwords on here. Trust no one. 25. Where did I hear this on it? It had to deal with our missile system. They wanted, so when they put in the failsafe for launching their nuclear missiles, they wanted to make sure there was a password on it. The password was 00000. Because they didn't want anyone to panic and forget what the password was at the last possible moment. They didn't want it. Now, there was other safeguards in place, I understand, so that no one could actually break in and type that particular part. But but the other part of it, so the top 5 passwords, ABC 1, 2, 3, QWERTY, 7, 8, password, 2% of all the users in that database, that was 2% of their passwords were one of those 5. So it's like, when I had that, like I said, a group of 300 people, I mean, statistically 6 of them could have had a password off of that part of it. And the thing is it's one of those things where, in my part of it, when I started on the internet, none of this was important, so I had it. A creature or habit, I left it that. It's like easy, it's automatic. I always remember what it is. It's easy to put in. I don't do that anymore. Password lengths, bigger is better. It's just basically exponentially how strength and stuff grows. I charted it, I spent a lot of time, and I think it kind of got a little bit overkill, but password lengths. Just adding, so if the red line represents your password strengths, just by adding 1 character to the password makes a huge difference of how much harder it is for your password to break, to break your password and stuff on it. So, the longer your password is, the more work it's going to have to go into it to break the password on it. So it's like, can you remember a 6-character password? Well, all right, so how much harder is it to remember 8 characters? Okay, how much harder is it to remember 12 characters? The more you can put onto it, the more complicated it is. Now, variety is also the other thing on it. So it's all based off of character sets. So if you just were able to use numbers, those suitcase combination locks on it, you could sit there pretty, if you wanted to spend some time, you could go through all the possible combinations and open it up eventually on it. If you think about, the little suitcase lock, add a 5th wheel to it, it's going to take quite a bit more time to go through with it. If the wheels had numbers and alphabet letters, then that progressively causes it to get more complicated on it. Uppercase and lowercase are 2 different character sets. So use uppercase, lowercase, alphanumeric characters, and punctuations, unusual characters. So the larger you can make your character set, the better off you are on it as well. So longer passwords and random character sets. So when it comes time for somebody to brute force your password, the first thing they're going to brute force is going to be, well, let's try 1. Let's try, 2, 3, 4, 9, 11. They'll start going up on the number side of it. Well, if that doesn't get in there, then they'll start adding the alpha characters. They'll start playing around with it. So the more, if you have at least, one of each of those characters on it, that's going to give them a lot more guesses that they have to do to get in to get a password on it. And that is all explained, back to my friend Steve Gibson, is a concept called password haystacks. And it literally is, he came up with the idea that a password of something random, a password d dash 0 dash g was way more complex from part of breaking than having I think it was a 12-digit alphanumeric fully random part of it. But yet, this is a password you could probably remember. Now granted, if you use 5 dots in a row, that's kind of this example, so that's probably in the dictionary. So you need to come up with something else to pad it with. So, but the concept is to pad your password, make it longer. I will say that is on my current password for some of my equipment. That's exactly what it is. I think I'm up to about a 20-character password, and it's not hard for me to remember. So it's basically padding it and then avoiding common words. So I don't, one of the things that they said in the dictionary is when they were doing some of these password things, a lot of people had a dictionary word and a 4-digit number. So that's probably already in their password cracking databases is going to be every word in the dictionary plus, all possible combinations of a digit afterwards. Because if they know the last 4 digits, even if they're brute forcing it, is that it's still a small character set is all they have to do to guess to put that last 4 digits, or even just a 1 digit at the end. It's like, oh, hey, I need to change my password. Well, this will be 1, 2, it's going to be Scott 2. That's a great password change. I can remember that particular part. Again, if you pull up the website, if you can pull up the website link is on here, talks all about it. He did have let me see if I ever brought this part of it up. So this was a calculator. So if you just used dog, basically if it was an offline with a massive cracking thing, I mean, we're so far underneath of a second, that password could be, would be broken before I could say password. Even if I didn't spell it right. But if I put in D0G, we're still less than a second. But if I add just 5 more characters to it, I've taken it to 5 seconds. If I add a capital letter to it, we're up to over an hour now, almost 2 hours. And let's see, special character, asterisk. We are at, how many characters? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 character password. It'd now take a week to break it on the massive cracking array. So that would be hackers were able to download the database from XYZ site, bring it down, and they know the hashing algorithm. That's how long it would take to guess all possible combinations of it. But as you start adding things to it, we went from a week to years, 1.74 centuries at 12 characters, 1.41 million centuries. So
That would take dedication there. I'll expire before my password. Great part.
So now, and literally, so the question is, all right, so how do I come up with a 16-character random password? And this is a story I have to tell, and I'm fairly sure the guy who did this is not going to watch this one either, but I was working at a school district once, and I'm sitting here, and I'm sitting there working on their server, and I'm sitting here, and in Sharpie marker, my last name is written on the monitor. I mean, permanent Sharpie marker. I'm not sure if to be flattered or what the deal was, or if he couldn't remember my name. I said, well, what is it? He goes, well, that's the password for my server. But it was like right there. So, but if it was they said if it's a complicated password, the chances are really high that you will find that password written down somewhere within arm length of the chair of that person using it. Under the computer keyboard, under the mount. It'll be in a drawer or something on it. So it still needs to be something that you can remember and stuff on it. I've chosen to use things from obscure. Basically, there's certain things that I've heard that it's like, hey, that's really cool, and it's obscure enough that, you know, like if you use Gone with the Wind or something on it, your favorite book, a passage out of your favorite book or a favorite movie. You know, if you use the first letter off of every word in the phrase, or used combination of some of the words but some of the letters and stuff on it. If they're common phrases, now that I'm saying this, that might get put in the algorithm. If it's something obscure that you know, or put together, you know, you really don't want anything that could be found in a dictionary in any shape, form, or whatever. I mean, even if you put a word and then every other character was random or something into it, it's still probably with their password parts of it. When people see that, they'll be able to be added to the dictionary pretty quickly. I mean, there's not a lot. I mean, the storage space of having a large dictionary isn't a problem because they can guess through those things pretty quickly on it. So they'll put in whatever things that they can come up with in that part of it before they have to brute force it. So, but if the longer you can get your password, the better off you're going to be on it. But hold that thought for a little bit, because I'm going to make it worse. And this has to go to this lame joke, because do you know how you catch a unique rabbit?
Unique up on it.
You know how you catch a tame one?
Tame way.
Tame way. It's really. No, all right. So my it's, again, totally different concept, but this one I thought was pretty good because I hadn't heard this before. It's like knock knock.
Who's there?
Impatient cow. Moo! Sorry, you can cut that part out. So you know, not only now I got you thinking like, all right, 16-character password. That's what I need to do. Something totally random. Now I'm going to tell you, every place you use a password, it should be different.
How would I do that?
How would I do that? This is where when I get the presentation, it's just like, oh, there's just no way. They're going to have to deal with my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm not going through all that mess. So the password thing. So like the passwords at the government site were in plain code. Had that been a password database and you use that same password on your banking site and all the things on it, they're going to have your password for everything on it. So the best way is to come up with a unique random password for every website. Now there's a lot of different ways to do it. And I will say, the other thing that I do is if it asks me for a username, so my really sensitive sites, so I use a random password generator, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. And some of my passwords are 64 characters long of complete random gibberish. And my really important sites, my banking and my doctor sites, I've also made a random username as well. So it's not the same thing on a username. I have two things that are really bizarre looking on it. Now, if that sounds undaunting, I use a program called LastPass, and it's a password manager. There are other password managers out there. This is kind of the one that the GRC, the Security Now guy, has vetted. He's turned around, he's talked to the people who wrote it. Everything about the company seems to be that they're doing things right. And it's the way it's set up is that they have no way to actually decrypt your password data. It's stored up in a blob. All the encryption and decryption is done on local machines. The benefit to it is you only have to remember one password, your master password that unlocks all of it. The program's free. It's cross-platform, runs on mobile devices, runs on Windows, Linux, Mac. And they do have and so the next question is, how can they afford to stay in business? They have a premium version, and it's a little bit expensive. It's $1 a month. And you have to pay the premium part of it to get the access for the mobile devices, the iPhone and the Android devices on it. And then it also unlocks second factor authentication as well. I don't know, I unplugged the monitor when I did it here, but you can also, if you don't have, it's installed on my computer, but if you don't have it, you can just go to their website, log in, put in your password there, and you basically have access to your LastPass vault online as well, if you need to use somebody else's computer to do it. Not that I would recommend doing that normally on it. It has a password generator built into it. So that's basically, the cool thing about, what I like about LastPass, and this was a simple, it's been rock solid ever since I've used it, and I've been using it for three and a half years, I think, on it. You install it the first time, and then when you go to a website that has a password, you type in your username and password. Once you go to that site, green bar shows across the top and says, oh, LastPass has recognized that you haven't been to the site. Do you want me to save it in your vault? You hit yes, and that password's saved to your vault. So it doesn't force you to change your own passwords, but then when I set up an account at a new site, the password field comes up, I right click and say, generate secure password, and I put in, whatever, 24 characters and use upper lowercase, all these things on it, and create the password for it. It automatically puts it in, and it remembers it in the vault. So out of the 600 websites, passwords that I have in my system, I couldn't tell you what most of them are. They're all unique, they're all random. And so if somebody actually, like the Sony breach, my username was on it and password was in it, but it was a unique password, so they didn't have access to anything else. Yes?
Is that out in the cloud or is it on your local machine?
Both. So the plugins and the application you load on your machine, but nothing ever goes out to the internet unencrypted, and it's encrypted with your password. Your username and password is what encrypts it. And this is kind of the cool thing about it is that it hashes. So a hash is basically, it looks at the blob, it runs it through, and then it comes up with a fixed length set of characters. They do that up to 10,000 times before it ever leaves your machine. And then when it gets to their site, they run it through their system 100,000 more times to hash it. So basically, to unencrypt the password, it's over 100,000 times somebody has to run their password guessing program. They have to unwrap each password guess over 100,000 times to be able to pull that part of it off.
How many years have you used that?
Yeah, about 3.5, I think.
How many, have they been down in the last 3.5? Do you take like a vacation day then, or what?
No, it's because, so the application is local, and there's always a local copy on your machine. But it's encrypted. It's encrypted the same way. So everything's locked. If somebody was to grab that file off of your machine, it's accessed in the encrypted form. So, if they grab it encrypted blob. It doesn't do them any good. And it's as good as your master password is. If you use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as your master password, why put one on it in the first place?
Not supposed to use that?
No, So now they did have. Now this is the cool thing about the company. They actually had a security breach. Somebody was able. They don't know if they were able to take it, but they had indications that somebody was in a part, and they were able to get partial data. They weren't ever able to get the part that had the password data, but the company came out right away and just said, "Hey, this is what happened. We don't think there's any problem. We're going to recommend you do this." They've never turned around and hid it. There's companies that'll turn around and it's like, no, nothing's wrong happened at all. No.
So if they have a security breach, then you have to remember reset passwords that you don't remember?
Just the master password. So they said the worst case scenario is, this was the worst case scenario, is,
A lot of random stuff from Amazon?
well, you might not. They said in order to break it, they'd have to narrow down to your account specifically, and basically, if you have a complicated password, they'd have to basically, they couldn't unlock everything. So everyone's things salted differently. Basically means that everyone's stuff is encrypted completely different than anyone else's. So if they break one, they still have to put as much work into breaking somebody else's. And where they're at on time is still in the thousands of years part of it to be able to open up a blob.
So if that happens to you, you're severely unlucky.
Yep. You know,
Win the lottery, it's not
if you were Kim Kardashian, maybe, you know, and you got to think about, you know, me, there's nothing there, you know, there's a lot more people that they'd much rather turn around and try to get their passwords on, you know, Paris Hilton's dogs, you know, I don't know, on it, part of it. So, like I said, it's free to try, download it, set it up, don't forget your master password. Come up with something ahead of time to come up with a good master password before you download and install it. I installed it at my in-laws and they forgot their password. So, and then fortunately because their username was used, they can't create their account again using the same email address. And so they had a few problems on it. But, all right, so now the other thing that I did with it is I invested $25 and I got this little one-time password generator called a YubiKey. Basically, that's tied into my LastPass part of it. So every time I log in, I have my master password and I have to have my YubiKey plugged in the USB port. And before you say anything about the cell phones, they actually do have one with a RFID, NFC chip in it that you could unlock it with it. I don't have that particular one, but I have it set so my phone doesn't need the YubiKey, but my phone's locked up separately on it. That's part of the premium $1 a month. Part of it allows you to use this particular part of it with it. So the benefit to this is if I am on an open hotspot and somebody was able to, or somebody had a keylogger on their machine or an open hotspot and they read it, you really won't get them in because they're going to see the password that used at that time will be different than the next one that'll open up for it. So they have the other thing is they actually will grade, you know, there's a security piece on the grading of it. What was it? Poodle. Was it the Poodle? What was before Poodle? There was an OpenSSL exploit, Heartbleed. And the cool thing about Heartbleed is because once you log in, they ran the script locally on your machine and it went through and it knew what sites had been fixed for Heartbleed and which ones hadn't been yet. So there was actually a page on my machine that said, oh, by the way, here's all the places, you should go through and change your password on these sites now. And then there was like another list that said, wait to change it on it. They haven't fixed their exploit yet, so you don't need to change your password yet. We'll keep coming here until we tell you that that site's been fixed for Heartbleed. And then they have another security audit on it. So you go through your passwords, it'll tell you how many sites are using the same password if you have duplicate passwords and give you your password strength. I'm up to like 76%, but I have a lot of passwords that I just need to delete out of my list and stuff too. And because I'd been using it for so long and I had so many passwords on it, there's sites that I'm not going to go back in and change it to something else, but there's still vulnerabilities. I mean, you have to think if you're going to post on even if you think about posting on a forum or a blog someplace and you have to log into it, you know, if you use the same, and this kind of comes back to the uniqueness, I mean, that's all it takes. If that's the same password to your banking account and somebody breaks into that database because, you know, hey, it's something I threw together on PHP and, you know, security is not what I'm thinking about, they could conceivably have your information on it. So having unique passwords, I think, has been a pretty important thing on it. And like I said, this has been rock solid. This company has a commercial version. They have the paid-for version. They seem to be upfront if there's any issues with security and stuff on it. And the way everything's set up on it is that everything syncs. So like my cell phone, and the other part of it is that database syncs. So it's up in the cloud, but my cell phone has all the database, all my computers have it, so wherever I'm at. And the new Android part of it allows me to use, so when I go to log into my online banking, I was now able to use a big password on my online banking because I didn't want to have to type that in that little app all the time. So I guess I'm done babbling. Any questions? Yes.
You said a number of different times that the hackers or the people who are trying to crack passwords use a database, a dictionary, all kinds of different tools on their side. And you said that you had like a 64-character random set of characters that make up a password. Are the people who are trying to crack passwords looking at them, or are they using machines and dictionaries and that sort of thing?
So it's all done. Most of it, 99% of it's probably done automated on hardware. You know, it's that, you know. Did you know 80% of statistics are made up on the spot? Not that I would ever do such a thing. So basically, there's the low-hanging fruit. So there's a hashing table. So simple part, when people were hashing, and they're common algorithms, SHA 256, there's different things on it. There's a function called a rainbow table. So some of the things that they can do is pre-compute. Basically, if they don't do anything with it, they just run the password and they just put a SHA-1 hash on it. They can run a rainbow table, which basically means that they can randomly go through all the passwords and generate what the hash would be. And then it's just a reverse lookup. So they compare the hash that's in the database file. They look down to see if they have it in this rainbow table, which they've pre-computed, and they can look over and see what the value was. That's the first part of it. How to combat it is that it's a technology called SALT, not really a technology, but basically they add some random characters into it that'll change that hash. So if you use just SHA-1 hashing algorithm by itself, no matter what you put into it, if you put in one password and that's all they use, that'll be the same hash across any system on it. If you use SALT, you introduce some random characters to it, then that makes it unique to that site. Or if you add unique SALT to each user, so every user SALT is different, then the rainbow table is ineffective because every user's password is completely different on how the hash works. But almost all of it's done automatically on the back side of it.
I've got a follow-on question as well. I've heard the phrase rather than a password, using a passphrase. Something easy to remember, something long. I don't know if using a bunch of random characters would make it more difficult than using a passphrase.
There was some conversations about that particular part, string together 3 unrelated words like, you know, monkey, unicorn, xylophone or something on it. And that would be a strong password, partly because of the length and stuff on it. But again, once they turn around and, so what they end up doing, so the hackers will, you know, they'll have the computers break the code, but then they'll look at the passwords and they'll look for patterns that are in it. And, you know, like I said, one of the things was a lot of people would add 1 to 4 characters at the end of the number. Well, once they recognize that algorithm, they put that algorithm in to generate their password dictionaries. And so, you know, there aren't really, you know, compared to complete randomness, there aren't really that many words in the English language that, you know, it's pretty easy to do a dictionary attack and still put together those sequences of words on it. So adding those special characters and stuff in there. And, you know, and it does give them a heads up. If they know that they're looking for particular words in some characters, they're going to try different patterns of that. Oh yeah, people normally use 1 character and this, and that's really their secret is that they'll look at it and then figure out what they couldn't break automatically, and then if they can actually break it, then they look and see, all right, now what do they do? And once they figure out that part, they build an algorithm in to take advantage of that as well. Yes?
It seems that there should be, well, I guess there is, a GitHub repo or somebody else having a repo, an open source randomizer to do the same thing. And then basically the next thing is if it's open source, then you can monkey with your randomization. Everybody can come up with their own randomizer algorithm. And I mean, one of the things, I mean, ultimately what you want to do, you want to drive the cost up. Essentially, like for any entity, like for your school system, you want to drive up the cost of anybody getting into your stuff so that nobody monkeys with your stuff, and then they go after the people that have the 000 or, you know, whatever, pointing in the direction of essentially the easy fish to shoot in the barrel.
I kind of go metaphors. That's kind of like the joke of, you know, 2 guys are running in the forest. They come up, you know, and they find a bear, and one guy stops to put on his Nikes, and Guy goes, so you think that's gonna make you run any faster? You're gonna outrun the bear? He goes, no, but I'm gonna outrun you.
To answer your question though, is the passphrase better than combinations? What I've always heard is the reason passphrases are suggested is because they're extremely easy. You can have very long characters with all the combinations. So for example, if you had this following phrase, when I was 7 years old, I saw cars at 4th and Grand, exclamation point. That's a really long sentence. You have space, special characters, an exclamation point, commas, numbers, capitalization I, 4th Grand, the word grand's capitalized, and it's just like adding periods to the end. That is a very, in theory, padded password. It's a really, really long password, but you can easily remember, when I was 7 years old, I saw cars at 4th and Grand, exclamation
That's
point.
unique to
So
yourself.
what's your username?
That's not my because when I was 7 years old, I didn't see any cars at 4th and Grand.
So finish your thought. Finish your thought.
But that's from what I've read online, one of the main benefits of a passphrase, more than anything, is it makes an extremely long password. So if you need to have a password and you can't use a solution like LastPass or what's the one on the Mac?
Oh, so that's built in the keychain.
Yeah, but there's another one that's like $50 on the App Store. It's a big one. It's like something else password thing.
Keychain does it too.
Yeah. So pretty much the point is that if you needed a human rememberable on the fly wherever you're going password, you just generate a sentence. That's a sentence you say over and over. Usually a human being, if you say a sentence a couple times, will remember that sentence. And if it's a long enough sentence and you make sure that it's got numbers and just end it with a punctuation or put some commas in between and some numbers, and then you kind of capitalize it because you use proper punctuation of a sentence, it's one of those things that you should never have a problem remembering. And like Scott talked about, you can even use a sentence out of one of your favorite books. So in your mind, you just need to remember Gone with the Wind, page 7, line 3. And if you ever forget what that phrase is, you could literally open your book, or you probably find Gone for the Wind online, and look it up, and oh yeah, that's what my sentence is. Duh, how'd I forget that?
But then my question around that was, if the password crackers are looking for English words in that phrase,
Yep.
what makes that more difficult?
They have to get it
They have to
exactly right.
They have to get it exactly right. But more importantly than that, when he talks about like using a dictionary attack, or a brute force attack, I've seen the password list. If you ever look at one, it's 1. And the next line, 1, 2. The next line, 1, 2, 3. Next line, 1, 2, 3. And then it's 1, 1, 1. And then it's 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3. And then it's 1A, 1AB, 1ABC. So by the time they go through every possible combination of every word, the fact that you had a sentence that is this long, they have to keep adding on and adding on and adding. They don't just randomly say, let me take the word the and the word car and the word wind and the word fourth and jam it into a sentence and see what happens. They just increment.
It's
over
like the
and over.
monkeys in the room writing Shakespeare.
Exactly.
Eventually, at some point, they'll write Shakespeare, but it'll take a long, long time.
Yeah. More than hundreds of millions of centuries. Wow, way to cross-reference things from other. Kudos to you, son. Take a Kuzia bot.
I mean, but doesn't the security still come down to the storage end?
What was that, sorry?
Doesn't the security still essentially come down to the storage end? You know, the company you're making the password for?
Well, okay, so there are things, it's a concept of how they wrote the program. So basically, if you had a file, any file, and you encrypted it with a really good password, and then didn't tell me what it was and gave me the file, all I can do with that file is I have to try to guess what your password is to decrypt it. And so that's the philosophy that LastPass is using, is that they never hold your password and the files together. Your password part is not part of anything that they've ever known, ever see. That's not anything that they have. So what they have is just a random ball of ones and zeros that doesn't really mean much unless they brute force it.
Make a password for the site that just hashes with no salt, so to speak.
And so there are some password managers that are out there that do, they got around the part. They wanted to be able to display all your stuff on the website. So they keep your password, or they have another way into it to display it because it seems reasonable to them. It's like, well, no one will ever get that part of it. So there are going to be programs that are out there, and the episode that he had, the webpass that he had, that he talked about LastPass, he was talking about some other ones that they looked at, and they didn't have that same philosophy of, pre-encryption internet, pre-internet encryption. So basically, if you're going to put something out on the internet, you encrypt it with something that only you know before it ever goes out on the internet, that no one else has any more knowledge base on it. They're going to have to work really hard to open it up. I'm never going to turn around and say that they won't be able to do, because as computing power goes up, the big warehouse that the NSA built in Utah, the rumor is that they're storing encrypted, HTTPS traffic, but they expect that, sometime in the next 5 years, they'll have enough horsepower to break the technology of today, and even 5-year-old data still might be worth investigating, I guess, is what I have on it. So, it's why, basically, if the computer company does it right, you're in good shape. If they don't do it right, you're really no better off than using simple passwords, I think, on it. And I'm just, I'm trusting this person as a security expert who's talked with the company, and that company basically was open on, it's closed source, so you can't see it, but they basically explained everything that they did on the back side of it. And everything it sounds like they did was.
I think if they're using the standard AES symmetrical key encryption, and when it hits the cloud, it's already encrypted off your machine, short of a password logger on your own personal machine.
Well, I guess my
The
point
data
is
is
more the
secure.
fact that with like the 7-year-old boy saying.
How Gmail holds your password,
Right.
is what he's talking about.
Well, what I'm talking about is, I'm a 7-year-old boy standing on the street corner.
What I'm saying is they don't actually hold your password.
Who?
LastPass.
In LastPass,
No, I'm not talking about LastPass. LastPass is a good idea.
Gmail doesn't hold your
I'm
password.
saying if you use one password for anyone, your weakest point basically is where they're going.
What I'm suggesting is you don't even hash passwords in a database. So you use your AES symmetrical encryption to actually decrypt the portions of the database that you need encrypted. You're not even storing the hashes, similar to LastPass or anything else. So you don't actually store a hash of your password. It doesn't exist.
It's like the movie Sneakers. Everything's encrypted until you turn the box on and everything decrypts. So,
Yeah.
any other questions?
So do you get commission on LastPass?
LastPass.com/Scott.
Scott! It sounded like a really good sales pitch for LastPass.
I am.
Yeah. Okay. So full disclosure is I think I might have, but what it was is I shared this link to the presentation. I probably should shut this part of it off, but.
What referral code do we use?
What? No. They put it all in automatically for me. I met one of the people in LastPass at Interop a year ago, and I turned around and said I showed her this password, so she turned around and put a year's worth of free into it. So I haven't had to pay the $12 this last year. So
Couldn't make her stretch for 2 years?
well, honestly, I don't know how long it's. I don't know how long it's for. I just haven't had to pay. It's
Your
work.
email address so you can send her this?
Talk offline here. I can.
I'm not gonna sell anything less than 3 years.
Well, I'm gonna be if you don't have $12 to spend, or but you don't have to. I mean, that's the beauty of it. I mean, although I wouldn't want it, I would not want. I need it on my mobile device. I mean, that's the main reason I have that particular part of it. And like I said, my YubiKey, that's the other thing at home. So I plug that in. So those two things. I mean, $12 is pretty compared to what some of the other things are. It's not $1.99 off of XYZ store, but.
Do you want security or do you want to eat at McDonald's?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's $12 will work, but yeah, that's for my food budget. That's I can. I need to cut down on pop anyway.
Thanks a lot, Scott.
Thanks.